Good morning, Broncos country. Welcome into GMB as we break down Broncos training camp here as game week approaches for the Denver Broncos. I'm Cody Roark. I cover the Broncos here daily for Mile High Sports. I cover every single day, written, verbal, video, whatever you want. You can check all this stuff out, milehighsports.com. Yesterday was day 12 of Broncos training camp at the Centura Health Training Center. Today will be day 13, as this will be the final practice of the week that is open to the public. Media will be able to attend, and then Thursday, the team is traveling. I'm joined alongside by Aniello Piro, who, if you've been paying attention to Mile High Sports, you've seen he and I have done Afternoon Drive. We've done some shows, but more importantly, you're going to see a little bit more of us consistently throughout the year. AP, Broncos camp, rocking and rolling, my friend.
Good morning, Broncos country. What is up? Before we get serious, I just want to say he's always not that serious in the studio, so I'm happy that I'm sitting with him because look at that smile. This might be the first time we've made Cody Roark smile in the week and a half that we've been doing this show.
Right.
But I'll bring the pop and sizzle. We'll let Roark do the X's and O's, and yeah, you should be able to hear from me from time and time again. And one more thing, shout out my guy Outlaw. Did not forget about the man, the myth, the legend, Outlaw. Love you, buddy.
Outlaw, even though he's a Kansas City Chiefs fan, we love Outlaw. Shout out to Bill, who's been an everyday watcher.
Who's the guy who's always like, Roark?
Oh, that's my man, D-Rock.
D-Rock, I picture you, Roark, every time I see that comment.
Yeah, D-Rock's great. And then shout out to Angel as well, who has watched the show. Hey, we appreciate everybody. If you take time to comment, make sure you're watching this video, like the video, comment for the algorithm to interact with other people as well. And hey, do us a favor. If you're not doing so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button here on the Mile High Sports YouTube page. Not only will we have GMB for you every day, but we also have the Pickaxe and Roll podcast hosted by Ryan Blackburn. We've got some other stuff in the works as well, some really, really exciting things. So this is the place to be if you're a Colorado sports fan. And AP, I guess you want to throw it in there as well. There's a little bit of something for the people that are watching or listening that they can get involved with.
Yeah, so for the loyal listeners out there, I was rearranging the closet that we have here at the Mile High Sports studio offices, and I came across some of our Mile High Sports t-shirts, which is kind of a nice classic play on the old school Converse logo. And, we've used them a lot for staffs, for our watch parties, other events that we've done here at MHS, but, in kind of putting our YouTube brand forward and trying to push the brand forward. We talked about Outlaw and some of the other guys that have been in the chat. If you comment, like you always do every day, comment your shirt size, comment your name, and make sure to follow us on Twitter and also subscribe to the MHS YouTube page. We'll pick a lucky few people to send some Mile High Sports t-shirts to. I don't know where everyone lives, but out here, Cody, it's been sweating hot for the last few weeks. So I think everyone can use a new t-shirt in their closet. So comment your shirt size, comment your name, make sure you subscribe to Mile High Sports, and you might get a little t-shirt from us.
Well, let's dive into some Broncos camp notes. Obviously, AP setting things off here, giving some stuff away to the avid listeners and viewers here, Mile High Sports. Man, I tell you what, the one thing that's been constant throughout training camp is how freaking hot it's been at practice. Like, people look at me, today at practice, I'm wearing a hoodie today. I've been wearing hoodies for the last 4 days, and people are like, what are you trying to lose weight? Well, it's helping me lose weight, but more importantly, it's like, if you see my skin, I don't know if you can see it, I have an arrow, a sunburn arrow going straight down. So it's like the hoodie protects my skin from the UV rays here, but
you're like Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Might as well be at this point.
What would you be? An airbender, earthbender, firebender, waterbender?
To be honest with you, I never watched that show, so
he's a football bender.
Football bender. Yeah, I'm a jack of all trades in that regards there. But what else has been hot here at Broncos practice? It's been the offense the last 4 days, AP. And look, there's a couple of narratives I would like to address, because it seems like if Russell Wilson is struggling in practice, he gets torn apart. Oh my gosh, how come he's struggling? If Russell Wilson has success in practice, the narrative suddenly has become, to some fans, not to all, has been, well, Justin Simmons isn't out there. What does that have to do with anything? The offense is operating efficiently across the board the last 4 days. Justin Simmons has only missed 2 days of practice, but here's also something as well. The Broncos offense, specifically on Tuesday, AP, they ran a 2-minute drill, and it was to move the ball 75 yards. You need a touchdown, and you have a minute 40 to drive down the entire field with 2 timeouts. Denver didn't use a single timeout in it. Russell Wilson orchestrated a 75-yard scoring drive where he capitalized with Cortland Sutton at the end of it for a touchdown, but connected deep down the right sideline to Marvin Mims, the rookie out of Oklahoma, who we're excited to see a little bit more of. Jalen Virgil, last year's undrafted rookie free agent, getting in the mix. Greg Dulcich getting involved as well. You're seeing a quick and decisive rush, but here's a little bit of the trick here. right? If people are going to use the narrative that, okay, Justin Simmons isn't out there, well, you look at the defense, Pat Surtain's out there, Caden Stearns is out there, Randy Gregory, Frank Clark, Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper, those guys are all out there. Damari Mathis is out there. But the offense for Denver did not have Garrett Bowles or Mike McGlinchey at tackle in this situation. They're able to move the ball downfield. So if we're going to move the goalpost and cherry pick here, I feel like I have to highlight that. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because why is it that practice is so micro-analyzed to the minute detail and to the point it's different for different guys? Like if you look around the NFL, and you could touch on this, you're a Cowboys fan, Dak Prescott throwing tons of picks at practice. Lamar Jackson the other day threw 4 interceptions in practice. Geno Smith has thrown 3 interceptions in one practice before. And Aaron Rodgers has been throwing a ton of picks in practice. How come we're not seeing as much outrage with that?
I think a lot of it, I mean, there's 2 thoughts to that. I'll keep them brief. One is
Thoughts?
because
How many
I was
thoughts?
going to say I've got plenty of thoughts, as Mr. Roark likes to allude to consistently. But I think on the local level, I mean, naturally you're going to see more Broncos than anything just because of where we live and who we follow and don't follow on social media. The Cowboy slander is out there. It's just not as public. But, you know, the Bronco fan, and cover your ears if you guys are the sensitive Bronco fan, but like I don't want to say that they're entitled, but they expect success.
Yeah,
and
high expectations every year.
they have never, I mean, you think back to Elway and then with Plummer and some of the other guys after, or in who's the other guy, Jay Cutler, Tebow. Yeah. You know, like they've never had this stretch of just bad play. Simeon, Bridgewater, who was the kid that Paxton Lynch. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I think that they're a little starved for that good play. And there's also the frustration of someone who comes here, gets all that money with a track record of success and fails to have that or realize that rather in year one. But I do think part of it is the Bronco fan is not used to this poor quarterback play. But the other side of it, and this is from more our side of the game, you know, I wasn't actively covering the Broncos at training camp, you know, during the post-Manning era. But I remember, like, you know, when it was Trevor Siemian or when it was, you know, any of the other cats that were in there, it was always, offense looked great today. Offense is doing this. Offense is doing that. And then you get to the regular season, and what did the offense do? The exact opposite. And you're almost reverse engineering that right now with the current iteration of the Broncos where, oh, Russ didn't look good. Oh, interception. Oh,
Maybe
what are they going to do?
Good news then.
You know, I mean, the jury is still out. And I know you and I have discussed that last year's struggles, there was a lot of blame to go around. You know, Hackett, Russ, other players. But one thing we did learn is Nathaniel Hackett really struggled to take control of that room. And we also learned that maybe Russell Wilson needs a little bit of guidance at the quarterback position, which isn't the worst thing in the world. I'll put my hand up right now. Russ is bouncing back in 2023. So in regards to why this is happening, there's no other sports going on. You know, this is top of mind. So it's a valid point though, Cody, because I've heard this on national sports talk radio. We overanalyze everything in training camp, not just with the Broncos, but any NFL team because we've been starved. There's not a lot of baseball fans out there, or not as many baseball as there are diehard NFL fans that, you know, kind of correlate. NBA's been done for a minute. Hockey's been done for a minute. This is all we got.
And you've seen this well. You've been in the media game for a minute as well. This is the biggest thing that frustrates me is that you have people who are in the media that maybe attend one practice or they go to practice, they don't actually pay attention, and then they're the ones that say the most reckless stuff. But it's like the everydayers know. The everydayers have been out there. I've got a notebook that every time I go home after practice, I take the notes that I have, I put them away digitally. That way I can go back and I can reference, hey, day one, these were players who stood out. These are players who didn't. What was the storyline? Did the offense struggle? Did they have success? You can go back and you can chart all this stuff here. But I've been on the record of saying, for the Broncos this season, how they do in the preseason, whether they win all their games, whether they lose all their games in the preseason, has no indication for how they're going to perform in the regular season. What you want to see in the preseason is these guys gelling, getting some chemistry together, which is important. And look, they didn't get that last year in the preseason. I think there's valid arguments to playing your starters and to not play your starters. I think both can be true here, but it is valuable to get some reps in a live game situation against somebody you haven't gone against all throughout there. And look, here in 2 weeks, there's going to be joint practices with the Rams before the Broncos' first preseason game at home to set the table for 3 straight games at Empower Field. So that's going to be big. Aside from all of that, though, AP, I think the thing that you have to take advantage of here is just talking about the Sean Payton offense is still being installed. It is a work in progress here for this team. And come week 1 against the Raiders, you want to see them be, manageable, competent, but to expect perfection in week 1, I still don't think that's realistic. I think that it's going to take 3 to 4, maybe 5 weeks into the regular season for them to truly be where they want to be. And that's not a bad thing But they have to, hopefully you're winning more games in that 5-game stretch than you're losing. I think that's also key as well.
Well, Rome wasn't built in a day. And to expect Sean Payton to come over here and snap his finger and figure this all out overnight, essentially, it's laughable. I mean, it's going to take time. You have a guy, though, who's proven at finding success on offense, regardless of quarterback, regardless of different dynamics. Look back to his tenure in New Orleans. But, I think you bring up a good point as well. I know you and I have talked about it privately, and also you kind of just said it on air, is now is the time to make the mistake. Now is the time to figure out what does and doesn't work, what Russ can and can't do, or do well versus something else, or how's Javonte Williams looking, or how are these wide receivers looking without Tim Patrick. Like, now is the time to figure out your identity. And obviously, you'd never want to make mistakes, but how do you learn? You have to make mistakes in order to learn.
Practice, preseason,
and it's just perception's everything, man. And you bring up the joint practice thing. Like, I remember last year, like the Cowboys were in town practicing with the Broncos, and every single Broncos. Did you see how good the Broncos looked? Did you see how bad Dallas looked? Oh my gosh, this Broncos team mauled Dallas on the practice field. Look at how their respective seasons ended up. So you gotta read between the lines, look through the smoke. But I think the biggest point is make the mistakes now.
Yeah, I mean it's a bigger picture thing. It's a process because it's gonna take so much time to get there. And we see teams go through the ebb and flows. Like, remember Denver when they had Josh McDaniels first year? They started off 5-0, and then they collapsed. You could start off 5-0 and still kind of sprinkle things down. I think even under Vance Joseph, if I'm not mistaken, they started off 4-2 under Vance through the first 6 games, and then
you're correct.
Sputtered in that regard there. So
even Fangio, I think they did something similar one year.
Yeah. I think they had a 3-0 start 2021 with Teddy. And then they went downhill. But, the point I'm trying to make is Broncos fans, rightfully so. I know expectations are always high, but you really have to take it on a week-by-week basis. And what we're seeing right now in training camp, what we're seeing in the preseason, there are some things you can pick up and say, okay, hey, this matters in evaluation. But ultimately, it's going to boil down to your first few weeks of the regular season, getting in rhythm there. But overall, training camps, we're approaching here today, AP. Today is day 13 of camp. After this week, next week is really the final week of training camp that fans are going to have access to, and then it's just media only. But it's like it's already come and gone this quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it just flies by, and, you hope that that's where you have to kind of bank on these guys being professionals. Like, we know that Sean Payton has been chomping at the bit to get on the field, but also, the training camp dynamic has changed dramatically over the years. Think about what training, I think he even alluded to it in one of the practices that I went to, training camp when he first started compared to where training camp is at now in regards to what you can and can't do.
So
I mean, it really is a different ball game, but, we're finally getting to the meat and potatoes. You got the first preseason game coming up later this week. What is it? I think 4 more Sundays until NFL football is like officially back in a regular
Williams
season.
Days away.
I love that, and it's just one of those dynamics where you have to trust the process. And not to take a page out of the Philadelphia 76ers playbook, as
Didn't
that
work
worked
for
out
them,
so well. It did work out for Denver though, but you have to trust that Sean Payton, who's a tried and true professional, can work with Russell Wilson, who's been a tried and true professional, to reinvent the wheel on this offense and really just maintain what they've been able to accomplish on defense, because their defense is, that's what you're looking for. The last few years, I mean, that's what was the narrative ahead of last season, or even before they got Russell Wilson. Quarterback away because of how good the defense was. I do think that's still kind of the case. If the defense can replicate its success and Sean Payton can raise the ceiling of the offense, look out.
And look, I think if you're a Broncos fan, you've been at practice, share your own thoughts with me, but I think your observation from fans that I've heard from on social media has been, wow, a Sean Payton practice it's locked in, it's intense, it's physical. It's not anything that we saw under Nathaniel Hackett last year for Denver. So I think there's something to monitor. But Broncos country, want to reference back to really a big day. We talked about the 2-minute drive here, but here is my Broncos recap that I put together from Mile High Sports from yesterday's practice in Dove Valley. Take a look. Here at the Centura Health Training Center for day 12 of Broncos Training Camp. 12 days into this thing, and we are approaching preseason action on Friday. Here's what happened during Tuesday's open practice to the public. Another emphasis and another big day for Russell Wilson and the Broncos offense. In the final move the ball, need a touchdown period. Russell Wilson orchestrated a tremendous drive, driving 75 yards down the field, connecting with various receivers like rookie Marvin Mims, Jalen Virgil getting involved in the mix, Cortland Sutton making some plays, and Greg Dulcich before Wilson and the offense would cap things off with a touchdown pass to Cortland Sutton. good day here for the Broncos offense as they continue to stack consistency, which is ultimately what you want to see. Some injury updates for the Broncos as well. Wide receiver Brandon Johnson left practice after going down during one-on-one drills. He was able to walk off the field under his own power. During that same period, in 9-on-7, Mike McGlinchey seemingly left practice as well with an injury we don't know about just yet. We'll wait for Sean Payton to give us a little bit more insight, but those players did not return. For offensive tackle Garrett Bowles, it was a Veterans Day off. Same thing with Kareem Jackson. And on the injury side of things, of players who did not participate, Justin Simmons, Aaron Patrick, and Chris Manhertz, as they were dealing with injury management stuff that the Broncos want to be smart about. But let's get into a player spotlight here that we're going to talk about as well. And Montrell Washington has had himself an under-the-radar terrific camp here. And in a one-on-one period, he hauled in a 40-yard bomb with tight coverage on there. He continues to stack impressive days and is going to have plenty of opportunities to make this roster at the receiver position, but more importantly, as the team's kick returner and punt returner. Day 13 of Broncos camp is tomorrow. We'll have you covered every step of the way. I'm Cody Roark of Mile High Sports. As we get here through day 13 of Broncos camp, the storyline is going to be maybe not necessarily more so from a schematic standpoint, but during yesterday's practice, as we heard in the video, there were two injuries that happened. Brandon Johnson, who went down during one-on-ones, lower extremity, not sure exactly what the detail is. We'll wait for Sean Payton to give us a real glimpse as to what that is. But offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey went down during the 9-on-7 period for the Broncos and did not return. So really, I think the key is, do these guys come back today? Are they back today? I think the good thing about Brandon Johnson was he was able to walk off under his own power. Did try testing it, did try running some routes a little bit on the side field there before eventually going back in and not coming back out. So injuries stink. And I will say this, for the Broncos at camp, it's seemingly been lower extremities. But But the thing that I've observed here, and I'm not saying, correlation is causation, but I've seen so many players here at practice slip on this field. I don't know if it's the field, because here's the deal. We've been getting late afternoon rain showers almost every day. Is it because it's so humid out that there's just more moisture staying around on the field? I'm not sure. I don't want to say that that's the case, but for some reason, there's just so many things going on here with guys slipping and obviously falling.
It is interesting, the frequency, though. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't think that there's any, it may be the turf, maybe the rain, whatever it might be. I'm not going to have any alternative theories on that. But it does beg the question of, what could they be doing better? Is there anything that they could be doing better? Because you lose Tim Patrick. You talked about Brandon Johnson, who hopefully is going to be okay. Jonas Griffith out for the year. They've lost a couple of key players already. And I think I also do wonder, as more of a big picture thought, talking about training camp and how it's been different, maybe there needs to be more of a ramp-up period, because maybe it is just these guys are just going 0 to 100, or maybe there isn't enough of a ramp-up period. I don't know.
I feel like they've had a good enough one, though. I'll say that, because the CBA, NFL teams, and this I think maybe is the challenge. You used to be able, back in the day, when you could do two-a-days and things like that, practice physicality. You see guys tackling, going to the ground, doing some. Practices used to be super, super intense. But the CBA has made it to where you're limited on the certain amount of contact you're allowed per day, per week, and overall through a training camp, what you are allowed. And I think that often gets lost in the shuffle there. You can only do so much. But even when the offense for the Broncos struggled through the first maybe 5 or 6, 7 practices, I think a lot of it was the transition, because the offensive line previously, they're hitting bags, like little handbags and whatnot. You're not getting good enough contact, because ideally when you're going and you're running team 11 on 11, and you're an offensive guard and you're going and you're making contact, you're staying within the base of a defensive lineman. You know what these defensive linemen and edge rushers are doing? They're clubbing your hands down, because that's how you play. You don't get that with bags. And so since the offense started to piece things together, it's been nice to see that transition, but it's meant to be physical. And I would say that this has definitely been a more physical training camp than what we saw under Nathaniel Hackett. There have been some walkthrough periods, but for the most part, their transition, they'll have a walkthrough period during practice, and then they'll go straight into team, and it's physical. So it's not like your entire practice is walk-through situations as we saw under Nathaniel Hackett. But I think for the Broncos to get to where they need to be, Sean Payton and this coaching staff, I think, are in the right place. The biggest question for this team, though, AP, that I'm going to throw out there is it's going to be player health. Can guys stay healthy? And look, I think this is the one thing I'm probably the most nervous about. I think Broncos fans are nervous about. They're going to be excited to watch the starters play on Friday. I'm just anxious. I'm like, please don't let anybody get hurt.
Yeah,
It's football. Like, obviously the risk is there. You know, every time you step on the field, it's going to happen, whether it's practice, whether it's a game, but you can't lose any key guys. You've already lost a couple of key guys already.
Nothing takes the winds out of the sails like an injury, and it's just the way it is. There's nothing that anybody could do, unless there's malicious intent behind the injury. But, so often, Tim Patrick, non-contact, it just kind of happens. And it's reality. It's life, just like anything, and I agree with you, though, say your prayers or whatever you got to do, cross your fingers, cross your toes, and, let's hope that this Denver Broncos team can at least come out of the entirety of the preseason with, flying colors on the health front, because you don't want to see the Broncos have to punt the year or, losing Tim Patrick, and I know that happened last week, but, that is a gut punch, and it's like you can't absorb too many of those and expect to still be able to stand on both feet.
Yeah.
Realistically.
Knock on wood. I mean, we're seeing injuries around the entire NFL, and it's just unfortunate, especially this time of the year. You build up toward the regular season, which is the only thing that really matters, regular season play and what happens there. So hopefully Denver can get there week 1 against the Las Vegas Raiders intact. But as we close out today's show, let's talk about some player spotlights, some players who have stood out so far through camp that have not been talked about enough. And I got to throw out Montreal Washington's name in there. Yesterday's practice during one-on-ones, he hauled in a 40-yard bomb and mossed Faion Hicks in coverage there. I mean, it was a beautiful placement by, obviously, Jarrett Stidham on that throw. But Montreal has had a very under-the-radar camp, and I know the focus is really on Marvin Mims, who's had a good camp as well for the Broncos. But, like, for Montreal, a guy who was drafted to be the kick returner last year, I mean, the vibe right now is that they want him to be the return option there, and they're giving him a lot of opportunities to do that. But I've even said he's going to have to carve out a role for himself on the offensive side of the ball. So we have seen that. I think he's had a good training camp. Now the biggest question, can he piece it together here as the first preseason game comes along? You mentioned him, guys like Jalen Virgil. Now with Brandon Johnson's injury, I think the biggest question is, like, if this is something that lingers, who does this open the door up for? I mean, you have your names. Like, here's the evident names. Like, if I had to project, if 6 wide receivers were on the roster for Denver, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Marvin Mims, Marquez Callaway now at this point. I would have said Brandon Johnson. We'll see what the injury is. I'd include him, but then I would also include, another name along the lines of Marquez Callaway, Kendall Hinton, another, like, these are the names there. So you're going to hope that you can bank on getting a couple of these guys back on the practice squad, because you are going to have to release some talented players, and Denver's hoping they get them back, but they're also looking at 31 other teams. So that's kind of how I want to highlight things in terms of guys who have been standing out. But I think even something else that's been interesting, Vance Joseph yesterday at his press conference was asked about P.J. Locke and really gave him high praise and said, hey, this is a guy who's shown so much growth from OTAs all the way through now, and that he's heavily in the mix for the Broncos' third safety spot behind Justin Simmons and Caden Stearns, which means, like, hey, veteran Kareem Jackson is not necessarily guaranteed to make the roster, even though I love K-Jack. K-Jack's obviously done a lot of good stuff with us here at Mile High Sports. But, yeah, I mean, for that veteran presence, like, he's still competing right now.
Well, I mean, I believe Sean Payton said in the first week of training camp that it doesn't matter who you are, franchise quarterback, guaranteed player, journeyman, undrafted, he gives everyone a fair look in regards to who may or may not be on the roster. So, we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, the question with the receiver dynamic, Cody, is you're trying to install an offense. And part of installing your offense is having the pieces around you to help install that offense. And if you're not having your consistent guys at the receiver position, whether it's injury or whatever it might be, maybe that presents some hurdles. But I trust Sean Payton. I trust the offensive coordinator. And I just trust the overall vision to help get this unit moving in the right direction, because they don't have to be perfect. I mean, how many times have we seen Sean Payton win with a Taysom Hill or, insert X
Teddy
quarterback
Bridgewater.
here? Right. And I mean, look,
Trevor Siemian.
fine players, but it's not
Former
like
Broncos.
Yeah, a lot of former Broncos. But like, I think that almost proves as much about how much coaching and scheme matters as much as the player.
100%.
And you bank on Sean Payton's coaching, his scheme, his development, and his ability to, nurture these types of things and develop them over time to, not saying you could insert any quarterback or any running back or any receiver, but he's a good enough mind that you work with what you have. And you have to trust the process with Sean Payton on that front. One thing I do want to bring up, because you talked about it on yesterday morning's episode of Good Morning Broncos, and now he's the talk of the camp today, Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito. Two guys that are also getting a lot of run. And I just wanted to highlight that because you've been doing a good job of not saying being ahead of the curve, but like today on social media, X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Jonathan Cooper this, Nick Bonito that. But, with your nice little notepad over there at Dove Valley, you got the inside scoop.
I mean, to be honest with you, I like the notepad more than I like tweeting. It's kind of a benefit because here's the thing. tweeting, Xing, you know, all the
Des Bryant?
lingo and terminology. But it's like I find myself, especially when open practices, there are things that I do need to tweet out. But it's like I find myself missing a play or two if I'm looking down trying to tweet something versus a notepad. You know what I'm doing? I flip it. I'm watching chicken scratch. I'm like, oh, I can read my own handwriting, even though I don't know. Like,
right in diagonally.
Yeah, not even within the lines there, but it's easier. But then that's the ultimate thing is like I want to bring Broncos fans real coverage of what's actually happening, what's important, why you should pay attention to, you know, a certain player or something that happened, because there's so much misdirection. There's so many narratives out there, and the thing is like real football and like the coverage of it is so important. And hot takes, you see it. It's littered. Hot takes, clickbait, all this stuff. It pisses fans off. Like, it gets fans fired up, but it leads to those guys getting clicks and things for the wrong reasons. And it's like, hey, here's what's really going on. Here's why it's important. That's what you can get here at Mile High Sports. I'll try my best there. You know, like I said, I'm shooting all the video footage, all the video recaps, and I'm putting all that together, writing articles, doing podcasts, doing these shows here, Good Morning Broncos, obviously GMB. So it means something to me. I love football, man. I love football, and I'm passionate about it. And I want fans who are just as passionate about it to get something out of it. And that's our promise to you here at GMB, here at Mile High Sports, is if you're a real football fan, you love the Broncos, you're going to get real coverage of the team. And that's something I don't think you can always get consistently everywhere else. That's the daily promise we're making here, though. So just want to say thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Got to get ready to head over to practice here at the Centura Health Training Center for day number 13 of Broncos camp. If you see me out there, once again, come say hi to me. Sometimes people walk by and it's like they look familiar, like I maybe have interacted with them, but I don't. It's hard for me to remember everything. So if
he's got a lot of thoughts, folks.
A
lot of thoughts in Cody's head.
Thoughts in these streets, yeah. A lot of tings.
A lot of tings.
As our guy Drake would say. But appreciate you so much, Broncos Country. Thanks for tuning into this morning's episode of GMB. We'll be back tomorrow for more recap as the preseason is fast approaching.